Here's why Grassley'S memo is more damning than Nunes' Fisa memo by Amy Moreno for truthfeednews.com. There's a second GOP memo drop, and this one is even more damning than the first Fisa memo written by Representative Devin Nunes. This memo was written by Senator Grassley and Senator Graham and exposes a second dossier created by discredited author Christopher Steele, who this time used Clinton loyalist and friend Sidney Blumenthal as his source. From Town Hall, we'll bring you Wall Street Journal columnist Kimberly Strassel's tweet storm in a moment, but I'll take a stab at answering her question about the media right out of the gate. Three possibilities. One, the GOP hyped the Nunes memo, which quickly became the center of this whole firestorm, replete with counter memos, FBI objections, etc. The press followed the spotlight. Two, as we've been saying, there are so many complex pieces of this larger puzzle. Following the plot is difficult. It's not just news consumers wondering which memo is this now. It's many of the people trying to cover this drama too. The document in question here is a second, less redacted version of a Senate memo that few people have heard of. Three, the Senate memo produced by non-bomb throwers Chuck Grassley and Lindsey Graham is substantially more disruptive to the Democrats' narrative than the Nunes document, actually. And the press generally prefers Democratic narratives to Republican ones because most journalists are liberals. Of course, my guess is that some blend of all three factors help explain why the Grassley-Graham memo has barely registered on the national radar, even after we've endured multiple high-octane news cycles starring Nunes and Schiff. But on the substance, does Strassel have a point, or is this just the latest shiny object the right wing is waving around to distract from the real story, now that the Nunes memo was arguably a bit of a dud? Here's her case, Kimberly Strassel. 1. Why isn't the mostly unredacted Grassley memo front page news? Here's why. Because it confirms the Nunes memo and blows up the Schiff talking points, which the media ran with. Number 2, it confirms that the FBI's FISA application relied on the dossier and a news article, and worse, on the credibility of a source in the employ of the Clinton campaign. Absolutely. 3, it is proof that the FBI did not tell the court the extraordinarily partisan provenance of the dossier. 4, it provides evidence that the FBI presented the FISA court with materially false evidence in the claim that Steele had not talked to the press, and then shows that even after Steele admitted under oath that he had, the FBI did not tell the FISA court in its renewal. 5, it provides evidence that Steele was getting information from the Clinton team itself via the State Department. So now, not only do we have a dossier based on unnamed shady Russians, but on Sidney Blumenthal. How much of this was engineered by the Clinton campaign from the start? I would say all of it. Does that all check out? La Pundit digs into the document. A much more redacted version had been released previously and seems to agree that Grassley/Graham is a significantly bigger deal than Nunes. In our analysis of the latter document last week, we wrote that a major question was how much the DOJ relied on the Steele dossier itself to gain a Fisa warrant against former Trump advisor Carter Page? According to Grassley and Graham, the answer is a lot. All of it, actually. I posted that if investigators had used the unverified dossier as a starting point for which to chase down leads and produce more solid evidence to present to a FISA judge, that'd be one thing. But if they leaned heavily on Steele's file itself as the evidence, that would be sketchier. According to the two GOP senators, the FBI did the latter. Of course they did. They solely on the dossier there. From AP's excellent summary, the relevant bits of the memo itself are here. The bulk of the application against Page was dossier material. The application appears to contain no additional information corroborating the dossier allegation against Mr. Page. In other words, they seem to have treated the dossier as evidence, not as a lead. That's big news. But that's not all. Grassley and Graham alleged, based on intelligence, that the man behind the anti-Trump dossier was known to be unreliable by the FBI. They eventually severed ties with him because he was caught lying either to U.S. law enforcement or to British courts, telling each entity different stories about a key fact. Either way, FISA judges who approved and renewed the Page warrants weren't told about the proven unreliability of the foreign agent, whose work product was apparently the central basis for said warrants. The FBI might counter that Steele seemed credible at first, then they dumped him when he burned them. But that doesn't mean their hands are clean. A la Pundit writes, that doesn't solve the problem that the original FISA application against Page evidently relied heavily on information passed from a not very credible foreign agent. And B, that doesn't explain why the Bureau allegedly failed to tell the FISA court in later applications to renew their surveillance of Page that Steele's info maybe hadn't been so credible. Grassley and Graham make another good point about Steele's chattering to the press while his investigation was still ongoing. Once bad actors were aware that he was digging for dirt on Trump, they could have sought him out and fed him any amount of BS in hopes of it trickling through to the FBI and deepening the official suspicion surrounding Team Trump. That's how Clinton cronies, maybe even Sid Blumenthal, got involved in this clusterfuck. Okay? Because Steele was supposedly willing to accept even unsolicited tips about Trump. The Clinton team may have fed him rumors to help fill a dossier for which their boss was paying. You think? Two big points there. Even after the FBI recognized Steele was an established liar, his dishonesty was not disclosed to judges deciding whether to keep the warrants active during renewal applications, which were largely predicated on Steele's credibility. And the topic about which he apparently lied was whether he blabbed to folks in the media about his work, which could have opened up the floodgates for disinformation from shady characters eager to make the anti-Trump case as juicy and brimming with salaciousness as possible. That's where Blumenthal and company, whom I wrote about here, may have come in. What a mess. Also, speaking of not revealing pertinent information to the courts, It looks like Nunes was technically incorrect that the judges weren't made aware that the Steele dossier was paid political oppo research. But he was more broadly correct that the judges didn't have even close to the full picture of who was behind the unverified partisan document upon which they were primarily basing their surveillance of a U.S. citizen who happened to be a former aide to a major presidential campaign from the out-of-power party. In other words, Page was working for the Dems, okay. As Nunes himself later admitted, the Bureau apparently did not disclose in a footnote that the material was paid political research. It just didn't mention who precisely had paid for it. AP writes, the memo reads, in footnote 8, the FBI stated that the dossier information was compiled pursuant to the direction of a law firm that had hired an identified U.S. person, now known as Glenn Simpson, for Fusion GPS. The application failed to disclose that the identities of Mr. Simpson's ultimate client were was Hillary Clinton. It wasn't the campaign or it was Hillary Clinton. So, the disclosure came in a footnote and didn't mention that the parties who paid for the unverified dossier were the Trump campaign's explicit opposition. Maybe there was no misconduct in any of this, but even as someone who believes neither that suspicion of Carter Page was unreasonable, nor that this is all part of a grand anti-Trump conspiracy. Remember, the Trump angle of the Russia probe started earlier for an unrelated reason. There's enough in the Grassley-Graham memo to make me uncomfortable with the standards by which Page was surveilled by the U.S. government. So as you can see, that they actually made up the false memo, got the Fisa warrant under false pretenses, not telling them that it was paid by the DNC, and they kept the Fisa warrant every 90 days. They renewed it on false pretenses. They didn't alert the judge to who was paying for it. But I don't believe this story. I believe the judge was in on it. That's why he stepped down. I believe that Carter Page, like they said, he was working for the DNC in the 90s. He knew he was being set up. Page was just a patsy for the FBI, actually not for the FBI, for Hillary Clinton using the FBI, because she has them all in her pocket. You see? She has the judges, she has the FBI, she has everybody in her pocket. That's why she's arrogant and thinks she's never going down. You see? That's why she has that attitude of you can't touch me. Absolutely. But the thing is that even with Blumenthal, of course Blumenthal is with Clinton. These are all cronies. She has, first of all, McCain. McCain's in her pocket. You see what I'm saying? McCain handed it over to the FBI, the dossier. He handed it to Comey. And McCain claimed he didn't know what was in the dossier. Are you kidding me? He knew what was going on. He knew everything. That's why the only people that are fighting for the truth are Nunes, Grassley, and Graham. Meanwhile, you got the whole FBI, DOJ, everybody, people on the Republicans that are rhinos working against this country. Do you see what I'm saying? In order for them to stay in power, to destroy it. That's the whole point. It basically has nothing to do with Trump. That's what the liberals don't understand. It's their plan to take down the country, and the only people that are fighting for this are Trump, Grassley, Nunes, and a couple others that we don't know about, but it's basically when you have the judges in your pocket, you have McCain, you have, look at the Democrats, Pelosi, Schumer, paid by Soros. You see what I'm saying? It's a big web. That's why Hillary doesn't believe she's going down. Now, I hope that they can get to the bottom of this, but she's a damn good attorney and she's a weasel at that. And let's see what takes place because, we're fighting for our country at this point. That's basically the bottom line. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And again, thank you so much for watching.